Hello everyone, welcome to AWS Tutorials. In AWS Tutorials, you learn about AWS services. Today I am going to talk about how you can configure auto scaling in AWS Glue job, which can help optimize capacity for the Glue job, and then that further helps optimize cost for the Glue job. This is a very new feature which is still under preview, but let's try to understand it and hopefully it can help you optimize your Glue job run cost. So let's get started. Before we talk about that feature, let's try to understand how you can define Glue job capacity and how that converts into a cost for the Glue job run. So when you're trying to define a Glue job capacity, you provide two parameters. One is your worker type, and second is your number of workers. So you select a worker type, which could be G1X or G2X, and then you define, you select number of workers, and based on that, the whole capacity is defined. And I'm going to tell you how capacity is defined. But before I talk about the capacity definition, let's understand a new term if you have not heard this term earlier. And this term is called DPU, or data processing unit. And one DPU means it has 4 vCPUs plus 16 GB of memory and 64 GB of disk space. So keep this in mind. Whenever I say one DPU, that means in terms of capacity, 4 vCPUs, 16 GB memory and 64 GB disk space. Now come back to worker type and how it affects a number of workers and how it affects the capacity. So let's have a look at this table. So when you are saying your worker type is G.1X and you are selecting one worker, that means you are giving one DPU as the capacity. And that means you are giving 4 vCPUs, 16 GB of memory and 64 GB of disk space as a capacity to your Glue job. Similarly, if you are selecting G.2X as a worker type and you select number of workers equal to 1, that means 2 DPUs. So in case of G.1X, one worker means 1 DPU. In case of G.2X, one worker means equal to 2 DPU, and that means one worker will have a capacity of 8 vCPU, 32 GB of memory and 128 GB of disk space. So that's how when you select your worker type and number of workers, it converts into a DPU, and based on number of DPUs, you get those many numbers of vCPUs, GB of memory and GB of disk space. Now, how does this convert into a cost? So let's try to understand how costing works, and I'm going to give two examples here in fact. So the way cost works is you pay 44 cents per DPU hour, and your billing, and if you're using Glue version 2.0, then the minimum billing is for 1 minute. That means even if you're running for Glue job for 30 seconds or 45 seconds, still it's going to bill for 60 seconds. And after that, your billing is per second. And in case of Glue job 0.9 or 1.0, it's the same cost, 0.44 per DPU, but your minimum billing duration is 10 minutes. Your billing will not be less than 10 minutes, even if a job is finishing within 10 minutes. And this is for your Apache Spark jobs. If you are writing a Python cell-based job, then in that case, again, it's 44 cents per DPU hour, minimum 1 minute of execution and billing per second. So basically you can see here, in all types of Glue job, the cost works per DPU hour, and 1 DPU hour cost is 0.44. Now let's take one example and try to understand with this formula or this kind of costing method in mind, how do I calculate cost for my Glue job? So let's understand with an example. So let's suppose you create a Glue job, and that Glue job you said that you're going to select G.1X as the worker type. and then I'm going to select number of workers equal to 15. So you're giving 15 workers as the capacity. And this job runs daily, actually, one time daily, and total time it takes is 1 hour 30 minutes. So let's take this an example, and what I'm going to show you, you can use that to actually calculate price for the type of jobs you run. So let's get into the calculation. So since I'm selecting 15 workers and worker type is g.1.x, actually number of DPUs are 15 into 1, because one worker of g.1x type is equal to 1 DPU. So I'm talking about 15 DPUs capacity here. And if I try to convert this DPU, how many DPU hours? So basically what we are saying here is that this job runs for 1 hour 30 minutes every day. That means if I try to convert that into hours, it is 1 hour and 30 minutes is 0.5. So it's a 1.5 hours per day. So this job is running for 1.5 DPU hours per day. Simple. So 1 DPU hour cost is how much? 44 cents. So cost for the per day, how much the cost for the per day? The cost for the per day is 44 cents. That is DPU hour, 1 DPU hour cost, into number of DPU hours, which is 1.5, and into number of DPUs, which is 15. So basically what we are saying here is that 15 DPUs are running for 1.5 hours, and since each hour cost per DPU is 0.44, we multiply all these three things, and my cost per day comes $9.9. And if my cost per day is $9.9, I'm simply multiplying it by 30 or 31, whatever method you use it. And I'm saying that I'm going to pay $297 per month. So that's the cost this Glue job is going to incur you with this example I gave over here. Okay, so keep this DPU calculation, worker type, cost calculation in mind, and let's talk about what challenge you face. The challenge which I face is following. In this whole configuration, I can define a worker type and I can define a worker number, but that worker number is fixed. Yeah, and that could be a challenge if my load is not fixed. So for instance, if you are handling streaming data during the day, during the week, during the month, what I'm trying to say is you're trying to use a Glue job to process your streaming data. Streaming data is generally not fixed. Sometimes you have high volume of streaming coming, sometimes you have low volume of streaming coming, and in that case, if you try to work with a fixed number of worker nodes, it creates challenge for you. Even if you're not handling the streaming data, even if you're like handling non-streaming data where the files are captured or data is captured from databases, sometimes the files are small, sometimes the files are big. For instance, I'm trying to ingest daily sales from my ERP system. My daily sales is not fixed. My daily sales probably will be high during weekend or some particular days in the week. It will be low in some other days. It might be high in some seasons, low in some seasons. So even if I'm trying to ingest sales record from my ERP system, I cannot assume a fixed capacity here because my sales is also fluctuating. And here I'm not talking about streaming data. I'm kind of taking daily dump of my sales data from ERP system to my data platform. So what generally people do is they test their Glue job for various capacity to see which capacity fits their performance and cost parameter, and based on that they simply allocate capacity, and generally that is a worst load scenario because you don't want to be in a situation where your Glue job is under provisioned and it is not able to finish the job. So bottom line is that people try to give allocate capacity based on the worst load scenario, and in that case it happens that you are paying for your Glue job more because your glue job is not always optimal used. If you have a scenario where your workload is fixed and you know how many workers are good enough to handle, then probably it's not a problem for you. But in a practical world, it doesn't work that way. So people provide capacity for the worst case scenario, and in that case they pay more for their glue job. And this is a challenge because you are not providing any kind of we were not providing any kind of auto scaling in the AWS. Now with the new feature, auto scaling is now available with the glue job. So earlier, as I showed you in the pictures as well, that when there was no auto scaling, you can provide a worker type and your number of workers. Now with auto scaling, actually there is one more parameter which comes. In fact, parameters change a bit. So you select a worker type, you still select a worker type, then you say I want to auto scale number of workers, and then you simply say how many maximum number of workers you want to auto scale to. So what you're saying here to the glue job that, okay, go for the maximum 10 workers if required, not beyond that. So you're kind of capping on a cost, but under the cap of 10, you can fluctuate. You can sometimes use 2 workers, sometimes 10 workers, sometimes 5 workers, depending on what kind of load you're handling at that point of time. And that way, since your number of worker utilization is flexible, it's auto scalable, you're not paying for constant 10 workers, you're paying for what workers you're using at a particular point of time, and your cost is optimized because you're not paying for the full capacity, you're just paying for those number of workers what you're utilizing. And that's the benefit auto scaling or automatic scaling comes with, where you can simply define a maximum number of workers and worker type and let the job decide how many workers it wants to use depending on kind of load it's handling at that point of time. So few more facts to know about the auto scaling. First of all, as I told you earlier, it automatically adds and removes worker in the job cluster, and that way it optimizes your cost, and you're still working under the maximum cap on the worker, so you're not going to hit the roof on the name of auto scaling. Second thing, it can handle both streaming jobs as well as non-streaming jobs. So both it can handle. Only thing you have to do, you have to use AWS Glue version 3.0. Okay. Next thing, it supports both G1.x and G2.x or G.1x and G.2x worker types. Standard DPUs are not supported, so please keep that in mind. No need to plan for maximum capacity. We have already talked about that. And right now this feature is under preview and available only in Ohio region. So I'm going to give you demo in the Ohio region, but I'm sure this feature will be generally available in some time, and then you can use it in other regions as well. Okay, time for the demo. What I'm going to do, I'm going to create two identical jobs. In one job, and both job will simply take data from S3, write data to S3. One job, there will not be any auto scaling. And other job, there will be auto scaling. We will run both jobs on the same data for the same type of job, same types of transformation, same type of output, same type of source and target, everything. And we will see which job uses less DPU hours. And if everything goes fine and I'm not caught into surprise, the auto scaling enabled job should use less DPU hours. So let's go to the AWS console and see things in action. Let me first help you understand the setup a bit. So I have logged into AWS console. What I have done, I have created a S3 bucket structure where I have got my data lake bucket, where I have got basically a script folder where I can keep any script if I want. I have got this transaction line items folder where I'm keeping date-wise transaction of a store. I'll show you data soon. This data I'm going to use as a source data. Okay, this data I'm going to use as a source data, and then I'm going to use trans out 1 and trans out 2 as a location for my destination data. So if I show you transaction line items, it has a CSV file which is simply keeping data store number of transaction per store date wise. So if I can go to Athena and show you, in fact I have cataloged this data in my Athena. So if I go to query editor, if I go to top, you can see over here that I have created a DojoDB database. In that DojoDB database, I have got a transaction line items table created. And if I try to fetch, say, top 10 records of this table, it shows you date-wise, store-wise number of transaction. What I'm going to do, I'm going to use this data as a source data, and then I will create a very simple transformation where I'm going to aggregate number of transaction store-wise, and then I'm going to write that as an output to my target location. And I have got two target location. One is trans out 1, which I'm going to use to run where I'm not using auto scaling. So trans out 1 will not use any auto scaling based job. And trans out 2 will also get the same kind of output using a different job, and that job will run with auto scaling. Right now the both folders are free, as you can see here. If I go to AWS console, as I mentioned earlier, that I have a Dojo database created, then I have got this transaction line items table created, and then I don't have any job at this point of time. Hopefully I have deleted everything. Yeah, there's no job. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on Glue Studio over here. That will open the Glue Studio, and then I'm going to simply start writing these two jobs. So I clicked on Glue Studio. Let's go to the left hand side menu, jobs. I want to use a blank canvas. And by the way, I want to make sure you guys understand, I am doing it in Ohio region. And I'm doing it in Ohio region because currently this feature is available under preview in Ohio region only. So I go to the Glue Studio jobs, want to create a new job. Let's start with a blank visual canvas. It has opened the canvas for me. Let's try to read data from the source. For that, I can use simply Glue data catalog. So I can simply say, go to DojoDB. Here is my transaction line item. Simply read it. So pretty straightforward configuration. Read data from this table in DojoDB. You can see it has recognized output schema and everything. And rest, I'm going to write a transformation, and this transformation I'm going to use as a SQL transformation. So I'm going to use a SQL transformation, and in this SQL transformation, it's simply using my Glue catalog as a data source. So here I'm going to change this query, and I want to use my aggregation query. So let me copy paste this aggregation query, and then I will explain you. This is pretty straightforward SQL query. So what this aggregation query is saying over here is that, okay, let me go to left hand side, select store number, then sum of transaction as total transactions from my data source. So my data source, so my source data, my data source. This my data source represent actually the data coming from the S3 bucket, and then group by store number. So pretty much straightforward query. And so this is going to give me an output of sum of transaction store wise, and then I'm simply going to write it to a target, and my target is S3 bucket. And let me configure S3 bucket. I want to let's keep it JSON as output format. Let's use default, browse, and then my output location is let me come down here. Yeah, here we go. Trans out 1. So trans out 1 is going to get the output of a job, output of the job, and I want to catalog it also. So as a good practice, I also always want to catalog my output, and I will call it a DojoDB, and in this case I will say it's a trans out 1. Yeah, so trans out 1 gets the output of so this data will be cataloged as trans out 1. So this looks good. I can now go and change the job details a bit. So here I am simply saying it is a dojo job underscore no auto scaling. No auto scale. So there is no auto scaling in this one. And I'm going to show you, I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to select dojo glue role as the role. Okay. Make sure you select glue 3 version because then language is Python 3, worker type is G1X, and in this case I'm not going to select for auto scaling, but I want to convert my number of workers to 20. I want to go for a higher number because then I want to force my glue job when I go for auto scaling to use a less number of workers. So I'm forcing it to go for 20, in this case, number of workers. And then as I do in demos, I try to make retries 0 so that it doesn't, if anything fails, it doesn't go into a retry loop. So pretty straightforward configuration, guys. I give this a job name, no to auto scaling. More important here, I change my worker number to 20. No auto scaling in this case, keep this in mind, and you can see it is still under preview. And then number of retries to 0, just for a demo purpose. In production, you might want to run with retries and save it. So now my job is created. What I'm going to do, that I'm going to run this job. So while this job runs, I can create another job, and that job will use auto scaling. So I will click on the run job. And if I go to runs over here, you can see my job has started. So while this job is running, let's save some time. And let's create another glue job. This time again I go for visual with blank canvas. So everything remains the same, only one configuration will change. So my source data again is glue catalog. I'm selecting dojo DB in case transaction line items. Then I click on transform, and then I select SQL as the transformation method here. And in SQL, I'm going to simply copy paste my query again. Okay, so here I copy paste my query. And if I close this, probably it can show you. So you can see here, and if I show you the query, just to be sure that we are typing the same kind of query, select store number, sum of transaction as total transaction from my data source group by store number. So this looks good. And then the next step, as we do, as we simply go to target. So we simply go to S3 bucket as a target. Writing in JSON format, no change in that. Only location will change. And this time I'm going to use trans2 as a location because trans1 is used by the first job. So I select trans2 as a location, like transout2. I choose that, and then again I want to catalog this one as a best practice. So I simply go to Dynamo like database as a DojoDB, and table is your transout2. So again, guys, I wrote the job exactly in the same way, where I'm simply writing the job to the transout2. Now I go to my job detail. And I'm going to give this job a name, and this name will be, I will call it, say, dojo, dojo job underscore with auto scale. Yeah. Again, here I come down to my configuration. My role is dojo glue role. Again, I come down here. This time, again, everything is the same. I'm using Glue version 3, Python 3, worker type G1X, and I select for auto scaling. Yeah, this is important. And again, keeping the number of workers to 20, like I did in first one. So first one also had 20. I'm still going for 20, but I'm saying let's use auto scaling in this glue job. Number of retries to 0, just for demo. In production, you might want to keep a number of retries, and then you simply save it. So this time I have created a glue job, which simply similar to the first one, only difference is that it has got auto scaling enabled by this checkbox. Now I run this one, and if I go to the runs, I should see it is running. So now what I can do is that I can go to my jobs, in fact, here, and you can see both our jobs are listed over here, and I think my first job should be done by now, hopefully. Yeah, so first job is done. You can see it has succeeded. Now let's wait for my second job to finish, which is still running. So we'll wait for this job to finish, and once it finishes, yeah, we are going to see the output and also compare the performance of the jobs. So my job has finished. So you can see my no auto scale job has also finished. My auto scale job has also succeeded, finished. If I go to tables, I can see my trans out one table is created, which is basically writing it to trans out one location, and you can see it has got store number and total number of transactions. Similarly, if I click on trans out 2, here also I can see this is writing it to trans out 2 location, and store number and total number of transaction is the schema detail. So both job has finished, both has done the similar thing. Only difference was that one job is using auto scaling, another is not. Now the moment of truth, we are going to compare the performance of those two jobs. For that, I'm going to use Glue Studio monitoring tool. And if you have not used it, try to use it. It is a very nice tool which gives a lot of details just few clicks away. So let's click on in Glue Studio monitoring. And I have run many jobs for last many days, so I want to filter down to today's job. Okay, let's compare today's job, and there are only 2 jobs which I run today. Both have succeeded. If I come all the way towards the bottom, you can see here this is my auto scale job. First one is with auto scaling, second one is no auto scaling. Both has got both type of performance, and you can see here, if I can be in the middle here, yeah, and here we go. So when I did not use any auto scaling, it used 0.47 DPU hours. So it is like 0.47, yeah, 0.47 DPU hours. So you know that your cost is proportional to your DPU hours, so you paid for 0.47 DPU hours. But when I used the auto scaling, it used only 0.05 DPU hours. It's almost 10 times less DPU hours. So you can see here, like in this particular example, and I'm not saying that always you will get 10 times or 9 or 10 times better performance or better cost performance. But in this example, you can see here that if I'm not using auto scaling, I'm running for I'm using 0.47 DPU hours. The moment I use auto scaling, I used 0.05 DPU hours. And in this particular example, my cost is reduced by 9 to 10 times. It's as simple as that. Again, that's not something a standard which you can like assume in every scenario, every example. But you can see here with this example that the moment you go for auto scaling, the total number of DPU hours your Glue job is utilizing optimizes, and since it optimizes, you generally use less DPU hours than the maximum allocated DPU hours, like in the non-scale configuration, and in that way you save cost on your Glue job. So that was all for today, guys. You saw how you can use auto scaling configuration in Glue job to optimize your Glue job run cost. Keep in mind, this feature right now is under preview and available only with Ohio, but I think very soon it should be available with other regions and it will be available for general. It will be generally available. Hope you like the video, and if you like the video, please click on the like button. Please subscribe to my channel. I always look forward to your feedback in my YouTube channels, whether it is for the new content or any mistake I made, you want to correct it, or any other design architecture discussion you want to do about the topics I have discussed or AWS in general. Please feel free to write your comments and feedback in my YouTube channel. I try to respond back to you soonest possible. So I promise to come back again in a week's time with another such video and tutorial. In the meantime, please stay safe and have a nice day. Bye-bye.